Hey, I'm Paul, and people always ask me, hey Paul, how do you get through a trip without using a whole bunch of bearings? How many sets of wheels did you use? And I'll be like, one set of wheels, and then they'll be like, how many sets of bearings did you use? And I'll be like, one set of bearings, and they'll be like, how many times do you have to clean them? And I'm like, I didn't. And then their minds implode. What do I do different? I use Phil Woods waterproof bottom bracket grease. So this is basically a bicycle specific form of what is called marine grease. It's a little bit different. It's formulated to be a little bit more fluid when around bearings. I hear it rolls better, but I don't really have a very good comparison myself. I know a lot of people that claim that this is better than most of the grease that they use on their bikes and that they can actually get down hills faster because of it. So I've been using this. I used to be a bike mechanic at a few different points in my life. So I had some of this stuff kicking around and it said waterproof grease. Sounded like a perfect thing. And boy was I right. Aaron Volson and I put this in our bearings before our trip to Peru, and we were able to just ride. Aaron may have changed his grease once. I kept mine in my bearings for the entire trip and I did not touch them once. I even rode on the Sailor de Uni, which is a salt flat. And we did this during the wet season when there was a little bit of water on the salt flat. And so our bearings got soaked with brine. Now this brine was so strong that if it got in your clothes and you let it dry out, you could actually fold the salty, dry clothing and it would snap the clothing in half. The next thing I do is I use titanium axles, or previously aluminum. That's not realistic for most people, so you can still use your steel. You can put a thin coat of this stuff on there and that will work just fine. Now, it doesn't have to be Phil's. Phil's is actually pretty hard to find. It's also fairly expensive. However, the alternative that I recommend is probably going to be about the same. So the other product that I might consider if you're having trouble getting this Phil's waterproof bracket grease is, or just Phil's, they call it Phil Woods or Phil's waterproof grease for ball and roller bearings. The other product I might look into is, it's called Liqui-Moly marine grease. Now, I have used a lot of Liqui-Moly products. I find that they have a molybdenum. They have a molybdenum additive, and it's a bunch of little plates that line up and they take out all the rough spots and it becomes really slippery. So I think that might actually be an excellent way to go. The only thing is it will be a little bit thicker than this. It might not roll as fast, but I imagine the moly additive might help it go. But this is basically just a marine grease that is formulated for bicycle bearings. So what is a marine grease and how is it different than other greases or lubricants? Marine grease is a type of grease that is designed specifically for use heavy wear applications where there is salt water. Okay? In order to qualify to be a marine grease, it actually needs to go through a series of wash tests where they try to wash the grease off. The way that it stays is from a few different additives that actually make the grease a little thicker. One of the additives they use is called a tackifier. It actually increases its stickiness. So it actually really holds on to the surfaces that it's on. So even if you have a decent amount of pressure trying to wash it off, there's a film of that grease that's left behind. And that keeps the water off of the steel. It's specifically designed to be used on corrosive materials like ferrous steel. They actually all have rust inhibitors and various other corrosion inhibitors for materials that are not steel. So they're really good at preventing your bearings from rusting when you use them. If you're going to buy generic, I recommend going with the Liqui-Moly. It's probably really fast. I really want to get some and test it out. And if you can, get your hands on it. This stuff is tried and true for me. One 85-gram bottle will last a very long time, probably your lifetime. And you can build a few bikes from scratch while you're at it. And I'm going to show you how I prep my bearings before these long distance skate trips, especially places with lots of rain. I use steel raced bearings. In fact, I often just use steel balls. I have had stainless races in the past, but lately I just go with the regular old stuff. I have a package of Bones Reds here. And first thing we're gonna have to do is clean them. What you want to do to take off your shields is you're best to use a dentist pick. You can usually buy them at a Shoppers Drug Mart if you have those, or your CVS or Walgreens or whatever, like your mom and pop shops would be probably a better choice if you have any of those in your area. If you don't have a dentist pick, mine is in a toolbox somewhere in my garage, and I'm a lazy guy sometimes. You can use a knife. Place the sharp end in just a little bit and then pry up. Be careful not to put the sharp part of the blade into the shield, because we do not want to cut the inside part of the seal there. Now, we also want to make sure that we're careful not to bend this. We want this to be nice and straight, okay? You see there, bearings open. Be careful not to damage the seal, because the seal does a lot of work at keeping dirt out. We want to minimize contamination. You can see the retainer in there. That's why we don't want to use WD-40. I have some sludge. This is gasoline. We're going to do it anyway. Oh, okay, this is going to smell really bad, Kat. This is really bad for your house. So we're going to put a little bit of gasoline in here, and then it's going to spill all over the place because it's gas and it just like creeps like crazy. Oh, you close it and put it outside. Oh, god damn. Probably don't use gas, kids. So you got a little bit of gasoline. Now, don't do this too long, because gasoline, I mean, it could potentially ruin the plastic inside of there. So it's just a real quick rinse. Okay, now we got to get it out. I'm just going to strain this back in the first bottle outside. It's good to have a bunch of glass jars. The glass doesn't get messed up and everybody's happy. And yeah, make sure you don't get gas on your table, because your girlfriend will get mad, or your boyfriend. This is a citrus-based degreaser. This is probably what you should use. Probably shouldn't use the gasoline. But the gasoline helps if you've got a lot of crud on the bearings, but it might ruin your retainers. WD-40 will ruin your retainers. So it's really important we get the lubrication that's on the bearings off. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our marine grease, or waterproof bottom bracket grease, and we want it to stick to the actual steel. And so having any oil residue, even like a microscopic little bit in any little pores, will reduce how effective that is, and the grease is more likely to rinse off. So we need to get rid of it. Really shake it up good. Once we have finished our degreaser rinse, the last step, you should wash your hands. Take a drink of Red's Bull. Thank you, Powell, Peralta. I would recommend 99% because there's less water. Then you take isopropyl alcohol. Most people have this sort of stuff. This might actually be good enough. You just might want it to sit in it for a while. I'm using 99%, so it really wants to suck out any water or anything. Now, it's important, I would recommend 99% because there's less water. Water is a catalyst for corrosion for the steel and the bearings. We also don't want them to sit dry. So once we're done rinsing them, and you see how gross it's getting? So that's partially the degreaser and the gasoline, but it's also a lot of the oil that came with the bearings originally, and it's being dissolved. It's softened up and now it's being dissolved in the alcohol. And then we want to do a second rinse. Don't need a ton for the second one especially. And you just go to town. Going to town. Going to town. Going to town. Okay. It's looking pretty clear. If it's still grody, do another one. Okay, one last go. Great. Okay, cool. It's important that we do this in the right order here because we've got a bunch of bearings that are damp with alcohol. Now we don't want to dry them all off at once and then have any oxidization happening. So we're gonna do this one at a time. Now, one way we can do this is to take a paper towel, slap it down a few times, wipe it off, dry paper towel, wipe it off completely. You can spin it. Don't watch your eyes because it'll spin in your eyes and blow it off. Or you can do what I do and just take my girlfriend's grip tape remover and oh yeah. So be careful when you're doing this that you don't set the alcohol on fire. You can spin the bearing with one finger when you have extended races or the integral washers. This is where we take our grease, and what we actually want to do is pack it right in there pretty full. Another way you can dry these off, I suppose, is like just blowing through them and giving them a few spins. That works too, I suppose. Take your grease, we're just gonna pack it in there. Try to inject it in. And then you can start to work it in there. Put a little dab on there and push it around so that way don't have any dry spots. You take your waterproof grease or marine grease and you pack the inside of the bearing with it. It seems like a lot, especially when we're used to using sewing machine oils or very lightweight race oils, and we're only using a drop on an otherwise dry bearing. We are actually going to pack the bearing. Now it does slow it down a little bit. I mean, you can have a little bit of space for air. You don't want to pack it too much, but really you can do a pretty good job filling it up and there'll still be air. And then we want to spin it and draw it into the bearing, and then we'll apply a little bit more. Leave a space. We don't want to airlock it. You do want to have one little area without with it. You don't want to pack it completely 360 degrees. And I'll actually drive it in with my finger and actually push it in there. Don't expect to wash this stuff off your hands. You're gonna have to scrub it off with paper towel, but not as good as the grip tape remover. We got the bearing here, right? And we take our stuff. We actually just kind of want to inject it in there and kind of go around. See how I have it going around like that? Now we'll spin it and it will draw some of the oil in because we don't want to have an air bubble. So we've spun it now and it's drawn the grease inside of the bearing. Now we can just top it off. And that should do really well. Really good seal. You can kind of see it peeking through there a little bit. I might put a little bit in behind and just kind of drive it in with your fingers like this. You can kind of see it peeking through there a little bit. So again, we're making sure we have a decent amount of grease inside this thing. And then we want to take our grease and we actually want to do a full coat of the bearing inside and out. So a Q-tip comes in handy here. So take your Q-tip, make sure you got a bit of grease on your Q-tip, and just put some inside of the race of the bearing. Yes, kitty? Do not use the Q-tip on the insides of the bearing because we don't want cotton fibers getting caught up in there. In my experience, this is a set and forget method. I like being able to take my bearings and, I don't know, ride on the salt flat. Like, that was legit. We don't need a lot of grease on the seal because we don't want to attract dirt, but I don't think there's really much we can do about that. The idea here is we have a grease barrier. Even if we just put a little bit on there, it should prevent water getting onto the balls and the inside of the race. Now, if you don't want to pack the bearing completely like this, you don't mind a little bit less waterproofing, you can put less grease in. Just make sure that it's completely on every surface. Okay, so these are 2 bearings done. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these. And yeah, you don't have to watch. Now, don't forget your axle, okay? Put some on your axle. It's steel. The last thing you want is the bearing rusting to the axle. Same goes for steel spacers. Make sure that you use some on the spacers to prevent it rusting to the axle and getting your bearing stuck. Now, I'm not using spacers and I'm not using steel axles. Like I said, these are titanium, so I don't really need to do this with the stuff at all. What's on the bearing is good enough. But you can put a very thin coat and then you can be happy. If you have pets like me, be careful not to get too much pet fur in this. Okay, then you press them in your wheels, which is best done on the axle itself. And keep a couple spares, just in case. So, when you spin it, your wheel's not gonna go very fast, okay? Like, don't let that worry you. Your board is not under load. It is not indicative of the roll speed. It will probably work some of the grease out, what's not needed, as you go. It's fine. The reason I use this grease, once again, is because it is formulated to be a little less thick than proper marine grease. And some people swear that they are faster at descents when they're using this kind of grease on their bikes. It's designed to kind of have a fluidity to it. This is not what we do for speed records. This is not how I would lubricate my bearings before my push races or downhill or anything. This is weatherproofing a steel bearing. I like the steel bearings. By all means, go ceramic, but I would still use some of this stuff because your races are going to be steel and probably not stainless. And even if they are stainless, I've had stainless rust to aluminum axles. So get that. I made a 10 mil aluminum axle and my friends made stainless steel bearings, which still needed a non-stainless ball so they wouldn't weld together. And so the balls wouldn't seize. But what happened is I had salt, and the stainless with the salt somehow bound, and it's not just the salt, like something to do with the actual corrosion caused it to bind to the axle. and those bearings are permanently stuck on my trucks that I used in Peru. Now, the bearings, the balls spun beautifully because I had grease inside of them. Phil's waterproof bracket grease, or Phil Wood's grease. But that's basically it. I'm gonna finish this up on my own before my bearings get rusty. And you can follow along on my trip over there in Alaska coming back home. And you can see how well they hold up. Who knows, maybe they seize up and I die. You'll know. But that has never happened to me. And I've used this on every distance trip I've ever done. One tube may cost like $25, $30. Maybe less if you're in the States. But it will last a very long time. Oh no, wait! I have one more tip about weatherproofing your board. So if you are using a board and you're a little bit nervous that you're gonna get water in it and you go like, what do? My Maple skateboard is gonna delaminate. Then what I recommend is find yourself some gear aid, SeamGrip+Sil. So this is a siliconized rubber cement. It's basically a very lightweight shoe goo with silicone in it. So it's super waterproof. You can't stick anything to this, so don't put it on something and expect to glue stuff to it. SeamGrip and SeamGrip+Sil are two totally different things. SeamGrip is like rubber cement for your outdoor gear, for your tents. This is specifically for siliconized fabric, like for your sill tarps. This is how you seal your sill tarps where there's any stitching. And I have this for my bivy bag floor. Now, what you do is you take a small dab of this, put a few small dabs on the rail of your board, and then massage it in. Now, I don't always do this to my boards. My bamboo ones were pretty good. I would only do it when I absolutely needed to. I do it to maple boards. I recommend it on maple. Like quite a lot. And you don't want a thick layer that's rubbery that can peel off. You actually just sort of want it to soak into the wood, and you want to massage it in there nice and smooth. Make sure that it kind of saturates the wood. Really get in there by the wheels and in areas like in the front where you're going to have a lot of wear. Okay, and then let it dry. Set it aside. What this will do is it'll actually really help prevent water getting into the maple, which will help prevent swelling. Sure, it's going to get scratched, water's going to get in, but you'll get a lot less of it. That's the deal. Okay. All right, before I go, I want to give a quick thanks to Powell, Peralta Downhill and Bones for providing me with these bearings. They just gave them to me. I didn't even ask, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to see how well they work. These are the kinds with the integral washers, which work out really well with my 158 mil hangers on my trip for my Kegels to work. Fits perfectly. Big thanks to Bones. Thank you, Kevin Reimer. And lastly, I'd like to thank Urbane Cycles in Toronto because they're the only place that was selling this online that I could get it shipped to me in time for my trip. And there was a little mishap on my end, and the guy went after work and made sure that this got shipped out the day. So I got it before I left, because this stuff is like a big deal for me. I do not trust my bearings to last, even the ceramic ones, even the stainless steel ones. I do not trust them to last these trips. I have well and truly destroyed my bearings, and this stuff has made it so I can't, no matter what I throw at them. So it's pretty heavy praise, so hopefully now that I've hyped it up, hopefully it works for you guys. No guarantees. Don't forget to use my affiliate links because, you know, I really don't make very much from the affiliate links. I'm hoping to have 2 meals paid for on my trip. I mean, I don't have a link for these, so maybe buy some Jehu bearings from Loaded. Maybe Skate One will have an affiliate link below. I don't know. I'm gonna ask them now. I've never thought of it because I'm not good at doing this thing that people do to actually be professionals. I'm only good at winning races when I'm young. So don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and let me know if my videos are too long by putting a comment in the description. So that way the algorithm shows my long video to more people. And make sure you clean all the grease off your camera. Have a great day and stop asking me about bearings.